On December the 26th, 1900, a ship named the Hesperus arrived at a small rocky island in the North Atlantic to deliver relief keeper Joseph Moore to the newly constructed lighthouse there. The ship's captain, Jim Harvey, was surprised to find no light beaming from the ivory tower, no flag flying on its flagstaff, and no response to his vessel's horn or signal flare. Bemused, Harvey berthed the Hesperus at the island's east landing and sent Joseph Moore ashore to climb the 160 winding stone steps to the lighthouse above. Aside from the darkened lamp, nothing seemed to be out of order, at least outwardly. The entrance gate was latched, and the door leading to the kitchen and storeroom was snugly closed against the December gales. But as soon as Moore stepped into the lighthouse, he knew something was horribly wrong. For this was no ordinary lighthouse, but the lighthouse of Eilean Mor, a place so shrouded in myth and superstition that few dared to set foot on its shores. The Eilean Mor Lighthouse was only the second structure ever built on the largest of the 7 Flannan Isles, a remote, rocky group of small islands in Scotland's Outer Hebrides. Eilean Mor, also known as the Big Island of the Seven Hunters, had been largely avoided for as long as anyone could remember. For centuries, the only inhabitants were sheep stored on the island by shepherds to keep them safe from poachers. The only sign of human life was the crumbling ruin of a small chapel and the remains of an ancient cross dating back to the 7th century. It's unclear when or why these superstitions about the Flannan Isles began, but the place has long been believed to be home to unusual supernatural powers, with many believing it was an intersection between the world of the living and the dead. Visitors to the remote isle describe becoming overcome with a deep sense of foreboding, and those who dared mount its rocky shores were quick to fall into prayer and superstitious ritual to prevent the gloomy feeling of the place from taking hold of them. Superstitions aside, there was no denying that the Flannan Isles were dangerous for ships. Weather conditions in Outer Hebrides changed quickly and drastically, with winds and tide catching many captains off their guard and condemning countless vessels to doom upon the jagged rocks. In 1896, the Board of Trade approved the building of a light on Eilean Mor, and on December 7, 1899, the lamp blazed for the first time, its signal visible for 20 miles. The 75-foot-tall white tower sits on a towering 200-foot cliff overlooking the steel-grey waters of the Atlantic. Though the lighthouse was a brand-new outpost, few keepers were eager to take on the role. While the duty of a lighthouse keeper was seemingly simple, it was far from an easy life. Keepers lived for months in cramped, isolated conditions. The days were spent cleaning, painting, and maintaining the building, while their nights were spent in rotation with other keepers always watching to ensure the lamp never went out. Some lighthouses were situated near a town or village, while others were in areas of remote beauty, abundant in nature and wildlife. Eilean Mor was neither of those. Apart from a thriving seabird population, there was little of interest on the remote wild island. And during their shifts, keepers were utterly cut off from the outside world. There was no telegraph, no radio, and definitely no postman. There was not even a boat for emergencies. The closest neighbours were on the Isle of Lewis, across 16 miles of choppy seas with no way to reach them. James Ducat was a seasoned keeper who served at several lighthouses, including a nearly 8-year stint at Rins of Islay in the Inner Hebrides, when he agreed to take the job. The 43-year-old father of 4 had recently earned a promotion to principal keeper, but he was hesitant about the Eilean Mor posting. Ducat felt the remote island was a poor location to send someone with a young family and had heard plenty of rumours about the area's reputation. Ducat was joined by assistant keeper Thomas Marshall, an unmarried 31-year-old with several years of lighthouse keeping and maritime experience under his belt, and Donald McArthur, a 40-year-old occasional light keeper filling in for assistant keeper William Ross, who was on sick leave. MacArthur was a father of 2 and a tailor by trade who served in the Royal Engineers. The last of their 4-man crew was Joseph Moore as assistant keeper. The crew worked in shifts of 3, each man spending 2 weeks at the lighthouse and 2 weeks at the shore station in Briasclet on Lewis. Moore was on leave in December and due to be back to relieve one of his fellow keepers on Boxing Day. When he arrived on the Hesperus, he had no idea that no light had been seen coming from Eilean Mor in over a week. 11 days earlier, the SS Arctur had passed the Flannan Islands on its typical route between Philadelphia and Leith. The captain noticed the lighthouse was not in operation and noted the anomaly in his log. When the Northern Lighthouse Board was notified of the Arctur's report, the Hesperus was already en route to the island. It was eerily quiet when Joseph Moore entered the keeper's quarters at the lighthouse on December 26. The fireplace in the kitchen was cold and the clock was stopped. The beds were empty, but nothing was out of place. It simply looked as if the keepers had walked away. Moore ran back to the Hesperus to report what he'd discovered and was sent with 2 crew members to conduct a more thorough search. A slate board, used to note weather conditions and general notes to be recorded in the log later, was last updated on December 15th. The lamp had been cleaned and the oil fountains and canteens were filled. The pots and the pans from breakfast had been washed and the kitchen tidied. Only 1 set of oilskins and boots hung by the door. It appeared that the keepers had completed their morning duties on December the 15th, but what happened after was a complete mystery. Captain Harvey left Moore and 2 of his crew to attend the lighthouse and conduct a search of the island, while Hesperus returned to Briasclet to inform the Northern Lighthouse Board of the bizarre disappearance. The next day, a thoroughly terrified Moore and his colleagues ventured to the West Landing to look for clues. Like the landing where the Hesperus had berthed, the West Landing consisted of little more than a spit of beach and a long zigzagging stone staircase carved into the cliffside. A platform about halfway up the cliff housed the crane and ropes the keepers used to haul supplies up from the shore below. Here, Moore discovered the first evidence of what may have transpired on Eilean Mor that December. A box of parts and coils of ropes had been tossed across the rocks, snagged in crevices and tangled around the legs of the crane. The iron railings around the platform and near the steps had been pulled from the rock and twisted. A large block of stone weighing at least 1 ton had been dislodged from its position higher up on the cliffside and tossed down to the path. A lifebuoy fastened to the railings had been ripped away. The kind of damage observed at the West Landing was not man-made. Storms were not uncommon in the Flannans, and the small isles often bore the brunt of the most severe ones. But the damage extended 110 feet up the cliffside, as if a towering wave had crashed into the rock with godlike strength. It appeared as though the keepers had been washed away. Northern Lighthouse Board Superintendent Robert Muirhead, who arrived at Eilean Mor on December the 29th, agreed. In his report, he concluded, quote, "I am of the opinion that the most likely explanation of the disappearance of the men is that they had all gone down on the afternoon of Saturday, December the 15th, to the proximity of the West Landing to secure the box with the mooring ropes, etc., and that an unexpectedly large roller had come up on the island, and a large body of water going up higher than where they were and coming down upon them had swept them away with resistless force. End quote. With that, the matter was considered officially closed. A replacement crew was hired, and the families of the lost men were told their loved ones had died in a terrible act of nature on Eilean Mor. However, many were unsatisfied with the official conclusion. There were too many loose ends. Most glaringly, it was strictly against the rules for all 3 keepers to be away from the lighthouse at once. If keepers had commandments, the first was, without question, "Thou shalt not leave thy light unattended." No matter what was unfolding around them, the keepers were expected to keep the light going at all costs. So, why had Ducat, McArthur and Marshall all gone to the West Landing together? Then there was the matter of the oilskins still hanging by the door. It was determined that Marshall and Ducat's oilskins were missing, meaning they had been wearing them at the time of their disappearance. What could have compelled 3 keepers to eschew all rules and rush out into a storm with one leaving his oilskins behind? In the years after the strange disappearance, a magazine would publish what it claimed was the logbook from the Eilean Mor keepers in the days leading up to their disappearance. The entries, allegedly written by Marshall, spoke of terrible storms, despair, and Ducat and McArthur praying and crying. Though most certainly a fabrication, the entries only fueled speculation that the true cause of the disappearance remained unknown. Many theorized that McArthur, a man with a reputation for having a temper, had gone mad and thrown the other 2 keepers over the cliff before plunging to his own death. In another version, McArthur had gone to the West Landing to jump, and Marshall and Ducat had tried to stop him, but had been pulled over or pushed from the edge by a gust of wind. Modern theories focus on meteorological factors rather than psychological ones. The coastline of Eilean Mor is indented with deep, narrow gullies called geos. The West Landing was situated in one such geo and terminated in a cave. In stormy weather or high seas, the water would rush into the cave, cause air compression, and then explode out again with enough force to sweep a man away. Many believe that McArthur had been manning the light while Marshall and Ducat went to the landing to ensure the crane and equipment were properly secured. Marshall had received a fine for failing to do just that on a previous occasion and may have been anxious about the approaching weather. It's believed that McArthur spotted large waves approaching the island and rushed to warn his colleagues, but was washed away too. This theory explains why he'd left his oilskins behind, but does not account for him taking the time to close the door and latch the gate. In 1900, waves towering above 100 feet were the stuff of rumours and legends. So rare, it was laughable to think one could have materialized near Eilean Mor. While the false logbook led many to believe the area was being hammered by fierce storms, there was no evidence at the time of such weather. But an Eilean Mor keeper in the 1950s took over 30 rolls of film to prove that such waves were possible, even common on the island. While the largest rogue wave ever officially recorded was just 58 feet tall, it's believed that such a wave, combined with the spray it could produce in the geo of West Landing, could reach the top of the cliff with such force 3 men could be swept away. Even with improved research, many believe that what unfolded on Eilean Mor in 1900 was supernatural in origin. Is it possible that the wild land believed to be a doorway between two worlds shook the interlopers from its shores? Later, there were rumours about subsequent lighthouse keepers at Eilean Mor hearing strange voices in the wind calling the names of the 3 dead men. Was it a warning, reminding the keepers they were not welcome? If so, the supernatural forces of Eilean Mor finally got their wish. The Flannan Lighthouse was automated in 1971, and the island is once again entirely uninhabited. A helipad was installed near the structure so maintenance workers can complete their tasks without venturing far from the shelter's walls. I wonder, does the wind of Eilean Mor still call to them? Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed that story, you may also be interested in our other channels, History Engine and Well I Never Stars. Right then, take care, and I'll see you next time with another story to make you say, Well I Never.